Hey guys, good evening. Work a couple bugs out real quick here with camera placement. Looks like I got halfway decent lighting for a little live stream here this evening. I'm going to chat for a minute with you on kind of my thoughts, my viewpoints on the particular topic of what is it that we should expect from our law enforcement in our local communities, our counties, our towns, our state, and what role do we have, you and I, in that? And I think as we dig into this discussion, we're going to have some people that are heated about it. Here's my request. Keep an open mind before you throw a bunch of comments or questions that are irrelevant to the conversation. Let's see if we can focus on the conversation, stick to that, and I'm gonna spew for a minute, give you my thoughts, and then we'll go into discussion mode. Otherwise, the conversation is just going to be what we call a circle jerk. So today over on our Instagram account, I shared a video, horrific video, of some police officers that intervened in a Walmart with a shoplifter. The shoplifter was not listening to the police. They're giving him commands. The guy was reaching into his pockets, into his waistline, which is a big no-no. Ultimately, 3 cops tried to subdue him. He had a gun. He ended up shot. He did not die. I believe what I'm told is he's hospitalized. From the video, it looks pretty bad. And in the video, there's a bystander. It looks like another shopper whose voice you can hear in the body cam footage saying, "Nice, nice." And I do not believe it to be nice, nice, like nice you shot him, but more shock, like holy shit, like that was that man's filler word, like some people say, So, I shared some thoughts with that video. And I think this is a good platform for us to have this discussion for a few reasons. One, YouTube, my friends here on YouTube, you guys can leave comments. This video will be here for other people to comment on in weeks and years. So here's what often happens. I'm not a cop. I know a lot of cops. I train a lot of cops. I've helped run campaigns for people that are in political positions such as sheriffs and state's attorneys, which doesn't mean that I know something about the job. I'm just giving you a background. I am a graduate of Force Science Institute, which is kind of a thing. It means I've studied a wide depth and breadth of knowledge on use of force. I've also got thousands of hours of training on the mats in jiu-jitsu gyms, on the range, and with law enforcement, both taking training and giving training. But here's where the conversation de-evolves, is when somebody that either is in law enforcement, and I'm going to piss off cops in this video, and I'm going to piss off some non-cops. And that my purpose is not to do that. I just understand that people are going to get heated when they hear some of this stuff. So we look at a video like this, and this is not Monday morning quarterbacking. When you have 3 adults unable to subdue 1 adult, and they have both of the person's hands behind their back, but rather than put cuffs on, they continue to have conversation, and eventually it turns into more of a physical altercation, you lost the initiative. I can say that looking at it. I don't need to be a training sergeant. I don't need to be a police chief to look at that and say that. I also can look at that without being a cop and say that there's got to be some better ways to do this. So we got a guy saying 40-year copper. So having trained cops across the country, it's really easy to make excuses. For example, you're not in that job. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, I spend hours every week physically fighting with other human beings for control. In addition to that, unless we have a magic wand that just shuts people off, either there is a better way or a worse way. And if the way that people are performing these hands-on skills and they're not working, then I think maybe we should look at a better way. And here comes the issue. Now, so my great-grandfather, Chicago detective years ago, back in those days, and I remember him when I was still alive talking about it, these guys were brutally violent to people. Though it's good that those times are different. It's good that times are different. But here comes the disconnect. When a police officer, sheriff, police chief, somebody like that says to me, "You're not a cop, thus you should not weigh in on this discussion." When somebody says that to me, I feel energy well up within me to tell them this: hey, fuck stick. Not only am I the exact person to tell you and weigh in on this, I am the person, not just me, but you guys too, that should be. See, we are a republic. So let's have a little philosophical discussion. We are a republic. Police officers work for both the legislative and executive branch of government, and both the executive and legislative branches of government work for me. As a representative form of government, police officers in any capacity, from federal to somebody that works in the littlest podunk town in America, are enforcing the laws that we, the people, decide to put on the books. Make sense thus far? So whether it be a traffic law, whether it be a law against human trafficking or drug trafficking, any of those laws that are on the books, whether you agree with them or not, are the laws of the people. So first of all, if you don't like the laws, that's another discussion. But that plays into this discussion. If you don't like those laws, change them. If I don't like the level of training or the type of training that my local police are doing, I have a right to weigh in on that. So do you. Now, I think that if you are going to get serious about your opinion on that, you should have some level of knowledge on it. Now, one thing I wouldn't do is I wouldn't walk into my mayor's office or my sheriff's office and say, "Hey, mayor, hey, sheriff, I think the whole department should be doing this." Why? Because it's not really my place to do so, but it doesn't mean that I should not have an opinion. Now, what I'm about to say will sound contradictory to my last statement, but it's not if we think it all through. Actually, if we are a constitutional republic, certain laws are void on their face. That's an interesting discussion, but I'm not going to go sideways down that because actually, if you completely understand how the Constitution works in its entirety, not just in some superficial form, there's a lot more to it than just that comment. So, if citizens begin to take a responsibility for our republic, they're going to take a responsibility for the laws. They're going to take a responsibility for those who enforce the laws. They're going to take a responsibility for those that interpret the laws, the judicial branch. And I do feel that responsibility. So when a cop, deputy, agent, a marshal, etc., tries to tell a citizen that they don't get a viewpoint on how they are policed, that is extremely not only off-putting, but it's analogous. It is analogous to an employee telling an employer, "You don't get to tell me how to do my job. You don't get to tell me when to show up." And of course, don't misunderstand. Don't walk up to one of your local patrolmen or patrol women and tell them what time to show up to work. Don't get lost in the weeds on what I'm saying. But herein lies the problem. For example, now vascular restraints are outlawed by many departments. Well, that's foolish. That is completely foolish. I mean, every day in jiu-jitsu and judo gyms across the globe, people get vascular restraints put on them. We were working guillotine chokes for a couple of hours the other night. It comes down to the implementation of the thing and a broad understanding of it. So here's where I'll piss off some cops. We do firearm training across the country. Oftentimes we extend free slots to coppers. most cops, and I've attended SWAT conferences around the area. I have attended big training events. I've attended trainings for tactical teams and been the opposition force for guys. Many people in this profession, many people, and I can say this after 15 plus years of traveling around doing this, do not seek out a higher level of training. That said, this goes in every area. I'm sure the guys working at the street department are not sitting at home at night reading about better ways to lay asphalt in their time off. I'm sure dudes or dudettes that work in the health department are not sitting at home doing research on crap that has to do with their job on their free time. But when you choose a profession where life is on the line, every day that you go to work, when you choose a profession where your own physicality may be the difference between your survival and the people that you swore an oath, which is meaningful to me. When you swear an oath, that is meaningful. You are literally telling the people of your community, your county, your state, your nation, I'm doing this thing for you. You're going to pay me. I'm going to uphold the laws that you create to the best of my ability with honor. And that in itself, I think, is sometimes lost. And we then look at these isolated situations where we get super hyper emotional. This video that's up on the account right now, where this man ends up shot. Look, in that situation, escalating force is required. That's quite a normal thing. That escalation of force is the same way a parent would deal with their child, not violence, but I'm going to give you a timeout. If you don't listen, you're going to get a spanking, or you're going to be grounded, or I'm going to take away your freaking video game or whatever, right? You ramp the shit up, and it's the same way. So I think for the general public, if you want to have an opinion, that opinion should be rooted in some facts. I would challenge most people in the law enforcement profession when it comes to knowledge on firearms training, meaning by challenge, I'm not saying better than, but I'm not an idiot or a neophyte on the subject. I've spent years and thousands of hours doing it. So in that area, I have a body and depth of knowledge, not just from me, but from the dozens and even 100 or more quality individuals who have passed on knowledge to me. So this is not me saying, listen to me, I'm patting myself on the back. I'm saying I'm not going to weigh in on vaccines, for example. I have a personal viewpoint on that, but you're not going to see me have a public debate on the medical side of things, because I'm not a biologist. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a doctor, right? So in that, I don't have a depth or breadth of knowledge. Do you get where I'm going with this? So when the citizen sees one of these heated, caught on body cam situations, and they allow their emotions, something we talk about constantly, to say defund the police, or those guys need more training, or those guys shouldn't have done that, or those guys, why couldn't they control him? Something my friend Paul Sharp likes to say is, if you think it's easy, and Paul Sharp, by the way, is a one-stripe black belt through SBG. Paul Sharp was a SWAT cop through a major metropolitan city here in Chicagoland. Paul is one of the founding members of ShivWorks, which is, a lot of you guys know Craig Douglas and some of the other guys from that group. Paul's one of the guys that works with me. MMA fighter, badass boxer, good dude. But Paul often says, if you think subduing another human being is easy, have you ever tried to put clothes on a toddler, or put a toddler in a car seat that doesn't want to have clothes put on them or be put in a car seat? And it's very true. Just a little person trying to fight you to get in a car seat or to not get their coat put on is hard. And that's, of course, you don't want to hurt this child. You love them, right? A grown-up, even somebody that's small in stature, controlling them is not easy. And to the general public, doing so in a manner where the person doesn't take great injury is not always easy. So let's add more to that. comment to the general public. Something we talk about in our classes constantly. We cannot assume that somebody that is making criminal or doing criminal actions is going to think like you, a reasonable, law-abiding person, you, a rational person. On that thread, that's why we don't tell somebody to stop and put our gun away when there's still a threat, right? We are assuming that demoralization is not a good course of action. Yet, for some reason, we see these situations and we go, why didn't they just do this? Or why didn't that person just stop? Well, they're a criminal. They're not going to think like you. They're not seeing the world in the same way that you see it, right? That's easy to thresh out. So as we move forward, I seem angry. I need to calm down. Is this person talking to me? So if somebody's telling me that I need to calm down or I'm angry, you must completely misunderstand. If you're speaking to somebody else, that's on you. But telling a person to calm down, whether they're upset or not, is probably the last thing that, especially if you're trying to communicate with somebody, telling somebody to calm down is about the most idiotic thing to say, because all you're going to do is piss them off. So you've never seen me angry. This is me speaking directly to people, maybe you too, because what happens is already comment section full of a bunch of conversations that have nothing to frickin' do with what we're talking about. But the human brain can't focus for 5 or 10 minutes. So let's dig into that for a little bit before we continue on the thread of violence. So for a living, I train people in the use of firearms and some open hand stuff and some emergency medical stuff. Every training program, I'm around adults. Every training program, I watch adults unable to control their attention for 10 minutes, for a half an hour, for an hour. That's nothing new, but it's getting way worse. Part of it is because of this type of communication. We are constantly inundated with information, with connection. It is a lost art to be able to just remain calm and take in information. In that, how do you pay attention and learn? How do you pay attention and learn what's going on in an environment, if you're in a training environment, or if you are in an environment where you need to keep yourself or others safe, if you can't shut off the voice in your head and start to become a course that teaches people how to communicate? And there's guys like Andrew Carnegie, Carnegie Hall, right? Andrew, billionaire, one of the richest men who ever lived, steel tycoon. One of the things that made Andrew great was the way that he communicated with people. Look at presidents, statespeople, folks that get something done, Jesus, Gandhi, right? Folks like this were able to communicate to people regardless of the level of tension in the other person. I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking this one isolated instance. What I want to talk about in this chat we're having is how you and I, we the people, change the narrative in our country. You know, if it's constantly the same thing, and by that I mean this, let's post up a video of violence, and here's usually how it happens. Here's a video of violence. Somebody chimes in, shit, man, that's my hometown. It's getting crazy. Somebody else chimes in, oh, that's Brazil. That's what happens there. That's what happens everywhere, right? Somebody else chimes in, those cops are idiots. They should have done this. Somebody else chimes in, some vile thing about that person should be drugged through the streets, etc. Nobody's actually having an objective conversation. Nobody's actually even having a conversation. What they're doing is just spewing thought at each other. It's like a snowball fight, but instead of snowballs, we're taking these little thoughts that flash to the front of our brain and just whipping them at each other. So just imagine that. All of us are like in this big snowy field, And instead of talking, instead of our words drifting to each other and us hearing them, thinking about them, contemplating them, instead, we're just whipping fucking snowballs at each other's face. Shut down trash police. So that is a very subjective comment. What is trash police? What is trash police? What does that mean? And you know, this is the great thing about our Constitution. The states get to decide what's right. Municipalities get to decide what's right. So your state government, you get to create a state constitution. That state constitution is enforced by your local police, county police, state police, right? Provincial police, depending on where you're at. We the people get to make those laws. You get to decide. So are there shitty cops out there? Hell yeah. I mean, I had a police chief in this area. I was illegally detained as a young man, cuffed, left in a room. I was literally, they thought that I was poaching deer. Never have I poached a deer in my life. I was pulled over for a traffic ticket on my way to work, probably about 19 years old. And later, they told me when they let me go, they thought I was somebody else who had a warrant for their arrest. Well, wait a minute. There was a warrant for my arrest. Why am I being let go? I mean, you had my driver's license. You had my license. You see my license plate. These guys were just scumbags. The whole police agency eventually got shut down. Actually, there's a good story about it because they had a racket of pulling people over, charging them with DUIs, which I was not. But for years, they'd pull people over, charge them with a DUI, no matter what. And in that charge, the person would automatically get like a $1,500 fine. And so even when people got it thrown out of court, they had to pay a municipal fine to the city for $1,500. They made hundreds of thousands of dollars. That kind of stuff should go away. Cops that are, anybody in government that abuses power should be treated harshly for said abuse. I mean, that's not even in question. I think that kind of stuff is a moot point to me. I've never met a cop that thinks scumbag cops should be cops. I mean, I've never met one. Anybody that abuses that type of situation should be treated correctly. I mean, they should be locked up, whatever the case is. Superhumans and exceed normal reaction. I don't know what that means, but this is such a broad topic, and we sometimes throw these flippant answers at it. For example, Jocko Willink and others. This is not a Jocko Willink thing because it's been around for years. In fact, post-World War II or even pre-World War II, go look back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, cops learned how to box. Most police departments had boxing clubs and wrestling clubs. Now, many police agencies are not even able, by statute or by force through unions, most of them are not even allowed to have physical standards for their law enforcement because the unions fight it. We have to have physical standards for a kid to be a lifeguard at the local fucking pool. But the person that we send out into the public to protect us, we don't have to have a physical standard for it when this person can't even see where they go pee when they look down at a urinal. This is an idea here of personal excellence. And this is where I said I'll piss some people off. I'm not harping on somebody because they're out of shape, but if you want to do a job where you may need to fight somebody to protect the people that you swore an oath to protect, maybe you need to take your physical health seriously. Maybe in your free time, you need to attend a gym that some of these comments, if they're to me, you write my name in it because I don't know if you're talking to me by just stating something. Maybe some of these folks need to start to decide, hey, if I'm going to go into a profession like this, am I willing to do what is required? Am I willing to do what is required to excel at this job? I mean, this isn't cutting grass, right? I mean, you can excel at cutting grass or you can suck at cutting grass, but if you suck at it or excel at it, nobody dies, right? People don't die. I have I have a handful of friends wage profile. Well, if you have proof of that, Hawks GNW Adventures, if you have proof of that, I would take that to a federal attorney from the Justice Department. If you have proof of that, then that needs to go to the Justice Department because that's a federal crime. There's something else. People weigh in on these types of accusations, which is pretty heavy duty. You weigh in on an accusation like that without proof. I mean, that's pretty heavy duty shit. My father used to say, have excellence. I've talked about this before. My dad did not excel at everything, but he did excel at some things, and one of them was the guitar. My father's an accomplished guitarist. Is he the greatest in the world? Maybe in his head, but he's not. But he's very good at it. That did not come from occasionally playing the guitar. It came from throughout his youth while his friends were swimming or dancing or doing whatever. He was in his bedroom playing the guitar. That is where excellence comes from. Back to the concept of Jocko Willink and others. This is not a new thing. Guys studied after World War II judo. They studied other Eastern martial arts, but Western boxing has been around, men punching each other with their fists and it being codified into a sport or a martial skill is as old as mankind. The Greeks wrestled, right? None of this is new. But it requires an investment of energy. So this goes both ways, though. So our motto is be your own Calvary. I have tons of friends that are cops. I hope that they all live to be long, old men and women. Hey, Tennessee. But I hope if I ever call one, they don't have to risk their life for me because I was unable to take care of myself. This is where people lose the message. None of you ever are without the right to protect yourself if you are in danger of death or great bodily harm. None of you are ever without the right to leave your family or loved ones or another if they are in danger of death or great bodily harm. None of us have to do that. I'm not going to trade my life for one of my local coppers to come in and give his for me because I'm incapable or unwilling. I mean, that's inhuman. That's immoral. That's the mindset that I think we as Americans have forgotten. It's like, oh, the cops are over here and we're over here. No, those are my neighbors, man. These are men and women that collect a paycheck from my community, but they're also the ones that are dealing with drunk assholes every night, people that have pissed themselves, people that are freaking strung out on drugs. Listen to this for a second if you're like the anti-cop crowd. So here's where this will piss some people off. And it's somewhat sad to talk about, but think about a guy or a gal that goes to work. Whatever your job is, you go to work every day, you've got bad shit. The cop, firefighters and paramedics too, every time that they're called, every single time somebody calls 911, it's because something is fucked up. Nobody calls within reason, right? People call cops for the wrong reason. So you with the legalistic brain don't raise your hand and say, what about the time? Meh, meh, meh. Legitimate calls, it's because somebody's sick, somebody's injured, somebody's bleeding to death, somebody is being abused, somebody's uncle touched them inappropriate, somebody's father or mother hurt them, burned them with a fucking cigarette, poured something on them to hurt them. I mean, this shit's every single day. Every single day. Then that person, that man or woman, has to bottle that shit up and go on to the next call to do a good job. And we expect them to do that because we expect professionalism. I read something the other day. I posted it. It was one of the ancients said it. I think it was Plato, or I think it was actually Socrates. I'll look it up here in a second. I just booted my computer. But we expect these people to do what we're incapable of doing ourselves. Then we get pulled over and that person's got a bad attitude, and we wish to be treated respectfully, even though they just did some bullshit, right? They just had to go see and do something that tore their guts apart. It's not a wipe away the sin or say it's okay, but can we not have empathy for a person that's doing Valor Ridge, good place, that's doing something on your behalf? Got a bunch of buddies here in our local area that are, look this up, that are in EMS. Every single call is somebody having a tragedy. And now think about it. These tragedies, these crimes, these horrific scenes, somebody blew their brains out. Somebody found a loved one hanging in a garage, hanging in the closet, dead. Every single one of those incidents, if one of us had one of those instances in our life or in a year, it would be a big deal, right? It would be a standout moment in your life. It'd be a moment where you would look back and you'd be like, fuck, man, that was crazy. I found my loved one dead, or that was horrible. This loved one molested me, beat me, something. That would be a standout moment in your life. Now, go imagine every couple of hours you have one of those moments. And now people talk about like cops that aren't in the big cities, even in the podunk towns. Well, let's talk about that guy or girl for a minute. They're still getting called out, even if it's a couple times a week, and they're getting called out for that shit. Those guys and gals in those little communities, here's the difference. That guy or gal is oftentimes, when something goes bad, the only one. There's nobody coming to save that person, maybe for 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I have a family member, a family friend that works in the Dakotas. This dude could be 45 minutes from anybody else. 45 minutes, an hour. If there's snow, it could be the next day, right? If a helicopter can't take off. And we talk about these situations as if these people should just absorb all of these traumatic instances over and over and over again. I'm looking this up, this quote I wanted to tell you. Am I making sense at all? Am I or no? Is it just a conversation that I'm having with myself? For some reason, the computer is not wanting to work correctly today. I wonder what I looked at. Yeah, I don't want to take the time. No legitimate discussion. You know what? I think as we go look at that Instagram post that we put up. Go look at it. Not now, of course, as we're talking. Parse through the comment section. Parse through it and just look at the way people speak to each other. Look at the way that they fire off anger, hatred, vileness. I had to block a guy today that just said some horribly, horribly racist stuff. Horribly racist. What his comments had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with anything. And this guy is a person that professes to be a lover of freedom, and then spouts on about what he really is made of. Have we lost our ability to be kind to each other at all? Have we lost our ability to understand each other or even try to? Have we lost our ability to have empathy towards other humans? Have we lost our ability to hear what somebody's saying and allow them to have a different opinion than us? I mean, that really is the truth of this. I love reading the ancients. There's a website I'm on, and the one I just pulled up, Plato said, good people do not need laws to tell them how to act responsibly. Good people do not need laws to tell them how to act responsibly, while bad people will find a way around the laws. That's pretty good. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. I wanted to read this one quote. What kind of questions do you guys have while I'm looking this up? And if the question is for me, write my name at the beginning of it. Yes, sir. I've heard that from people your age, like my pop. I like the first one, but I don't know what that's saying. But the reaction on it is a stretch. What does that mean? I have no idea what that means. Prove to your parents. I would guess the one thing I would say is, are you old enough to legally have a firearm? That's I would question that. Sorry, I don't know you. I don't mean to demean you or anything like that, but definitely a firearm is something that is only for the responsible. How much training would it take to make a significant difference? Talked about that earlier with some guys. Here's the thing. Any training, medical training, firearms training, gardening, cooking, is only as good as, one, the training program, as good as what the person that is doing the training is putting into it. And then three, ongoing physical skills. Let's be honest. Many martial arts are garbage. This will piss people off. If you can go get a black belt as a child from some dojo in a strip mall, that's bullshit. Many martial arts are bullshit. This will piss people off. Why do I say they're bullshit? Because they don't stand up under the pressure test of violence. This is not my opinion. This is the opinion of thousands of people. And it's really easy to figure it out. Put some gloves on and step into a controlled environment where there is somebody stopping you from using your art. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And of course, you don't just like allow one test. You try it over and over again. Yeah, lots of McDojos. something like judo or jujitsu or Western boxing or Thai boxing, something like that, for it to be useful, just like a firearm, but way more than a firearm, because learning how to shoot well is pretty simple. But developing skills where you have an innate ability of where your body is in time and space as there's another person that's trying to hurt you, it requires you to train quite frequently. Am I as awesome as I appear to be? Well, I wish, but I'm, and that's a good one. I'm a normal person. Thank you for that, though. And Uki. So for you guys, and Uki is a training partner. Go to, if you're on Instagram, go to my gym's Instagram account, Alpha BJJ, and Coach Mark just put up an amazing post today about being a good training partner. Yeah, wrestling is awesome. I've got a question here about our next S12. The next S12 event is going to be amazing. Any of you guys that have signed up for that event, my friend Z Durham, Paul Sharp, Brian McKenzie, Rob Wilson, the D-Day Response Group guys, which is several dudes, myself, and a handful of others. We put on 4 days of training. That's pistol, TCCC, open hand skills, where we're teaching people how to control another human being, how to make space. It's not training and you're done. It is to immerse you, and then hopefully you go home and find a place to continue that training. Food, lodging included. It's near Nashville. It's coming up. It's awesome. Thoughts on people volunteering for the fight in Ukraine? I think that is a very heated discussion. I think most people thinking that they're going over there to fight don't understand that they're probably going to end up on a State Department list, possibly imprisoned. That's a really hard discussion to have. I do not like what's going on there. I've been vocal about that. I do think, though, a lot of people, let me just go back a step. You go back a year or two, and there's a bunch of gun dudes that are sharing pictures and videos of Putin on horseback shirtless, or Putin doing some judo throw, and they're like, that's a leader. Now, because it's flippant. It's something to jump onto. It's making that comment, throwing that snowball without understanding what you're talking about. Now, fast forward, bad shit's happening. They want to go fight this guy. And I don't want to go deep into this discussion because it's not what we're talking about, but I do think anybody should do what they're passionate about. But for God's sake, if you think you're going to go over there and show off your freaking World of Warcraft skills and your airsoft shit, that's bad news. I have a friend that comes from he was a retired major with the unit, 1st SFOD, the Army's like #1 unit. And he one time told me, we were sitting quietly, and this man is a consummate gentleman. He's probably nobody that most of you will know unless you were in that unit, because he's not a social media guy. But he's been there and he's done that. And he told me one time, he said, young men want to drink from the cup of war until they've tasted it, and they want then to spit it out, and they can't get that taste out of their mouth. And I mean, people have written about this for all of time. I've never been to war. I'm not, it's not something that I would wish for anybody to have to be a part of. I don't believe that a lot of people looking at this are thinking clearly, is probably the best way to comment on that. So D-Day, D-D-E-Y, the owner's name of the company, my friend Don Deo, D-E-Y. He was a 18 Delta Green Beret medic and firefighter paramedic. And there's nobody that does TCCC like we do. Did it hit? Did it work? Any other questions on these topics? So here's the broad picture, just to circle back to kind of the point I was trying to make this evening. Cops should be better trained. We rely too much on tools. We, by we, I mean the voter, the citizen. We think that we can take a cop, we can take a human, flesh and blood, a regular person. And by the way, I've got tons of cops that come to our jiu-jitsu gym, and I beat them up. And I beat them up in a loving way. And some of them are bigger and way stronger than me. I beat them up because I want them to be able to feel that pressure from somebody, and we talk through it. Imagine you're alone, man. If you can't get me off of you, and I'm grabbing at their waist, even if they're in gi or just in rash guards, I'm grabbing at your waist. I'm going for your fucking gun, man. I am going for your gun. You've got to see that stuff in training. And unfortunately, a lot of law enforcement training, and I've been involved in it, people are not pushing themselves. Not all of it, but not enough of it. So we take these people, we the people, and we say, here's this job. You're going to go out, you're going to protect our community. We're going to give you all this gear. A lot of times, just so you guys know, a lot of the stuff that's on your cops, they pay for, just so you know, in a lot of places. So they've got all this thousands of dollars of stuff on vests and belts and blades and lights and guns and ammo and tasers and cameras and all this shit. Tools are only as good as the person using them. I've got a garage at home with tens of thousands of dollars of construction equipment that I ran a construction company, saws and all that kind of jazz, right? You can saw your fingers off, or you can build beautiful things with it. You can make some rough cuts, or you can make some good cuts. And if you can take the correct saw, but with the wrong blade matched to the lumber that you're cutting, ruin a piece of wood. Tools are only as good as the training and the person's know-how. Steinbeck, it's funny, I hear people quote what I'm about to say, and they attribute it to like some modern day soldiers. John Steinbeck said it. The mind is the ultimate weapon. All else is supplemental. John was a writer. John wasn't even a soldier or a fighter or anything like that. But when you dissect these problems enough, the same plain answers become true. So as we look at this, you, the voter, you, the citizen, have every freaking right to have a vested interest in the officers in your community, your county, your state, your country. I have a vested interest not only in what they're training, but how they're training. It's my right. I am a member of this republic. I am not, nor ever shall I be, a subject to some king, to some queen, to some monarch, to some throne. There is nobody that sits in Washington or in my governor's office or in my city hall or county seat that I need to bow down to. In fact, it is the opposite. Those are elected representatives of we, the people. And the cops that are out on the street, while I have the utmost respect for them, they are not above me. They are representatives of the people. So I am entitled by duty. So these men and women swear a duty to uphold the Constitution. I have a duty as a member of the Republic to be a vital member of it, to be a part of it, to continue it so that it can proliferate and go on to posterity, to the people that come beyond us. If I don't, then I allow myself to be a subject. Therein lies the truth. So as I see passion-filled law enforcement people saying, if you're not a cop, shut up, that tells me you are a small-minded person that has lost touch with your function, has lost touch with where you fit into the puzzle. You're not greater than me, nor am I greater than you, but we are two equals in this system. You have a job that you are paid to do, that you are trained to do, that you are empowered to do, not by a king, but by me and my neighbor. Get it? We cannot just arrive at these decisions, though, of no vascular restraints, or we must do this, or we must do that. And because oftentimes the people making those choices or those decisions have no fucking idea what they're talking about. And they're making those choices based on fear. So go to the Instagram page if you're on there and look at some of the comments. My friend Hollis Gracie in Brazil, Portuguese, Rolles. So if you read it, it'll look in English like Raleighs, but it's Hollis Gracie. Hollis, his father is Halls, Rolls. He's passed on, but they say that he was maybe the greatest jiu-jitsu practitioner to ever live. That was his dad. Some people say that it was Rickson Gracie, who is the lineage which I train under. But Hollis commented and said, if these guys had a little more training, they would have been able to get the handcuffs on, and that blew up. And people are telling Hollis, let me tell you a little bit about Hollis in a second, but people are telling Hollis, go train with your pajamas on. Hollis, besides being a jiu-jitsu guy, he's a world-class skydiver, which you may say, what does that have to do with training or law enforcement or anything like that? Somebody that's a world-class skydiver, yeah, they're related, they're cousins. And by the way, Hollis would just crush the guy you just listed. There's a good stories there, but yeah, they're cousins. But Hollis, being this world-class skydiver, that is a methodology to not die doing that, right? If you have hundreds or thousands of jumps, it means that you are calculated in the way that you approach something. It means that you are serious in that endeavor. So Hollis was in the UFC. Hollis has dozens and dozens of fights. As far as jiu-jitsu matches, probably thousands of those. He was an ADCC world champion. To put that into context, it means that in 2007, when he was the ADCC world champion, it means that that's like the best dude in the world to grab you and kill you on a mat. And, true jiu-jitsu is not just grappling, it's striking, it's kicking, etc. But what it comes down to is controlling another human being where you can do to them whatever you want and they can do nothing to you. So looking at Hollis, who's a friend of mine, he's got a gym in New Jersey. He's been on the podcast. You can look at him. People being so insulting. Go put your pajamas on. He's a 5-stripe Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Now, in other martial arts where you can get a black belt in a little strip mall dojo, that doesn't mean anything. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a 5-stripe black belt basically means that this person has dedicated their life to a martial art. My coach, Dan Hart, dedicated over a decade, and he's a black belt, no stripes. His coach, Henry Akins, has been training since the early 90s with Rickson Gracie. These people are not just some dudes that roll around in pajamas. They're people that have spent decades practicing, experimenting with what happens when human beings interact violently. Now, there's this common thread where people say, oh, that might work in the ring, but it won't work in the streets. That is such the dumbest, idiotic statement in the world. Go walk up to a person that's got good boxing skills and try your street ninja skills. You'll get your teeth folded in. Go find a high school wrestler that's maybe like one of the good kids on his team and try your street skills. The kid's going to double leg you, slam you into the ground, tie you up in a ball, and you will scream and cry because you're stacked up on your neck and probably shit yourself. I'm not saying that you might not have skills, but when people are like, oh, my street skills are just no good. I mean, legitimate MMA, besides kicking somebody in the dick or gouging their eyes or biting, really anything goes. And just last week, I was kneed in my right testicle full force, which sucked and can be a devastating injury. I did not have a cup on. And about 10 minutes later, another opponent, and this is not normal, but it just so happened that this day my nuts were an attractant for people's knees and feet. A guy, I was in Costa Rica training, a guy full on kneed me in my right nut, and it was bad. But I continued to train. I had to take a break for a second and check to make sure I didn't like have some kind of major issue. But then 5 minutes later, a dude kicked me in my other nut. And I'm just like, all right, like universe, what are you telling me? What are you telling me? Go get a massage of my nuts or like what? But neither of those things took me out of commission. Neither of those things stopped me from, not only did I continue to train, but 10 minutes later I was laughing. I've been poked in the eye. I mean, people continue to fight with bones broken. People continue to fight with all kinds of crazy injuries. Why I'm saying this is the purpose of these arts is that they allow control. But even cups, no, I don't walk around with a cup, and that's another discussion altogether. But I'm not going to waste the energy on it. Why I'm continuing to go down this thread is if you care about these things, it's like exercise, right? You don't like exercise the first day of the month and say I exercised, I'm good. If you care about your physical health, you exercise frequently, regularly, often, right? You don't eat like shit every day of the week, and then one day of the week you have like a bite of broccoli and say I took care of myself. Martial arts are a path, right? So like if you look at Eastern arts like Taekwondo or Hapkido, do means way. It's a path. It's a way. It's a journey. It's not like they didn't call it this thing like buy this book and you get the certificate or learn this move and you got it. It is a path. It is a lifestyle. It is a place that you not only go physically, but spiritually, mentally. You are training these things not just so that you win in violence, so that you win in life. So as we start to bring this conversation now full circle, it's not something that we can legislate. We can't Miyagi-Go. We cannot just tell our county or city officials, and I think one of you alluded to it earlier, we cannot just tell our city officials or our county officials, mandate that these guys become a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. First of all, that can take 5 years of training if the person does it. Maybe 3 years for some places, 4 years to do that, of training regularly. What is this person going to do for that time? What are they doing up to that? This is not easy answers. These are answers, I think, rather than try to legislate, what we do is the same thing. Now I'm going to get up on my preaching pedestal. We do the same thing that the 56 founders of our country did. By the 56, I'm talking about the 56 that signed the Declaration. They started a firestorm, and they started that firestorm by deeds, not just their fucking hollow words, but by their deeds. See, for years, men and women sat around and they talked about a revolution. They talked about freeing themselves from the Brits. They talked about it, and they talked about it, and they talked about it. And some of them said, "Oh, let's give it a little longer. We don't want to push. We don't want to listen." And eventually, some of them said, men like Patrick Henry said, "We sit here idly talking while our brothers are out there in the field fighting." And they finally put pen to paper, and they did. Perhaps if more people do, like my friend Paul Sharp, my friend Z, my friend Craig Douglas, and others, if they exemplify the way, if they exemplify what my friends like Dan Hart or Henry Akins or guys like Jocko or Andy Stumpf or others have done in their life, if they exemplify that in their own life and become an example, perhaps more people will say, you know what? That makes sense what that guy's doing. They're doing it. They're pressing on to a higher level of excellence. They no longer have talked about it. They now have become a man or a woman of deeds and not fucking words. See that shirt that we just came out with? Facta non verba. Deeds, not words. Deeds, not words. We want to change our judicial system, our legislative system, our executive branch of government. It is done through action. So this conversation is not entirely the one I wanted to have, but it's the one that we're having. I think it's the one that we needed to have. It's not just should cops train more and how should they train? It's what do we expect for the members of our republic? I'm not going to hire somebody to protect my community to do something that I think is unreasonable. I'm also not going to expect that person to subject themselves to a life of bad situations and not be highly paid for that. I think cops, firemen, paramedics should be paid more than they are, regardless if you're in a little town or a big town. And that's a we the people problem. Huge problems with alcoholism in those communities. Huge problems with lack of sleep, sleeping pills. Huge instances of heart disease, of premature death. And that's not just from the lifestyle, or rather the exposure throughout the lifestyle, but that lifestyle exposes these people to adrenaline dumps over and over and over, and the cortisol levels get jacked up in the body. People are not sleeping at night. They're not able to tune the shit down. I just did a video, Daniel, about CCW Safe. That's the company that I work with. I am not going to comment on your comment because I don't know anything about it, but I do know that the one that we use, CCW Safe, is the only one that I recommend. Teachers, I think, should be paid commensurately, but a teacher is not being subjected to the same level of physical and mental abuse. Somebody could make like an inference or comment about that, but it's just not the same. Teachers are not going to work every day in doing CPR, finding people in car wrecks, etc. It's just not even on the same level. And there's a price to pay for that, right? When I remove myself from responsibility, and that's what happens. So like if any of you guys go out on the ocean alone, or you go into the woods alone, you are taking responsibility for your own safety and those with you. As we have developed and become a more industrialized nation, and we hire more firemen, cops, etc., we are creating these people that take responsibility for our safety. And it allows us to rest easy because we know in 5 or 10 minutes, somebody's going to come and help me. In that, there needs to be a trade-off. And if I'm going to give up some of that responsibility for my own personal safety, I'm going to pay for that, right? I'm going to pay for that. Yeah, CB, I mean, that's legitimate. That's probably not a bad idea. We don't expect teachers to solve our family's problems. We don't. Somebody may. The way I see a teacher is that teacher is passing on tacit knowledge. They're passing on codified knowledge, English, mathematics, etc. I never looked at a teacher for my kids to solve anybody's problems, but other than to pass on information. People need to understand the role of the teacher and stop looking at the teacher as a problem solver. They are an educator. The word educate comes from the word educo, to draw out. Their job is to draw out this truth in our child and help them find their way with this information. They're not there to solve people's problems. Maybe we need to instead redefine their role. Guys, it's been about an hour. We covered a lot of turf here, and if you came here because you thought I was going to say cops should learn ABC, I'm sorry, that's not what I gave you. If you came here because you thought pay, life, impact, and accountability should all be equal, I don't know what that means exactly. Let me finish my thought. If you came here because you thought I was going to rip on cops, that ain't going to happen, but I do think that we need to start to take more responsibility. This is an ongoing theme from me, is this responsibility for our place in this society. I'm scared of things like equal pay. Why? The whole reason that our Constitution was codified as it was is that people in different locations, i.e. the states, the federal government was never meant to be this big ballooned monstrosity that it is. That was meant to be the highest level of government, was meant to be at a state level. that sort of stuff should be left to states to decide. And teachers are important, don't get me wrong. But on this comment of pay, if we're going to talk about it, yeah, I'll be in Utah again. Talking about pay, this money comes from somewhere, right? If the average income of a community is half of it is in another place, but you're trying to pay the people in that community the same amount, in both communities the same amount. If you got a cop in Santa Monica and a cop in North Dakota, the average household income in that little town in North Dakota or in Santa Monica, California, could be 1/3, right? To try to pay them the same means that the burden of that pay on the people out in North Dakota, it's just not fair. That's really the kind of shit that drives inflation. Now we're talking about economic stuff that's not really in my purview. But here's what I would leave you with. As we look at these conversations, listen more. Pay attention to the situation, the conversation. And if you don't have something to add, instead say, what can I learn? What can I learn? You know what? Maybe what you can learn is, I don't want to listen to any of these people. They're idiots. Maybe what you can learn is, I should develop more knowledge on this topic. Maybe what you should learn is, thank you for that, CB. Maybe what you should learn is there something that I can add? You know, it's hilarious. Daily, I get questions, simple questions, and I'm happy to answer them when I can, but I won't be abused because somebody's lazy. People ask questions that these smartphones of ours or our computers will tell us in 2 seconds. People don't access the knowledge, right? We all have libraries in our town or near us, which are amazing. Back in the day, you went and pulled an encyclopedia out or went to the library and you did some research. Now you can do it instantaneously if you so choose. I think too often we don't even try to learn. You know, I read. These are just a handful of books. I read not about everything because I don't have time to read about everything. But if I want to learn about a topic, you know, I just pulled this one out. I haven't read this in years. Jeff Cooper's The Art of the Rifle. I haven't read that in 10 or 15 years. There's so much available to us if we just want to dig in and try to develop more on a subject. In that, when we have more knowledge, people like to say knowledge is power. That's a fallacy. Knowledge is not power. All those books are full of knowledge, but if you don't pull the knowledge out and then apply it and direct it somewhere, it's meaningless. That's not power. It's potential. It's maybe. It could be valuable. It's like the knowledge of building a house or baking a cake. If you don't actually go assemble the materials, assemble the ingredients, and follow the directions, you're not going to get the house. You're not going to get the cake. So it's only potential. You and I have a duty, regardless of if you're in law enforcement or if you are a citizen or just a citizen that is non-law enforcement. You and I have a duty to protect this republic. At the very core of our foundation, of the principles that founded this country, the citizen, you and I are the foundation. The citizen, you and I are the thing that holds the whole system up. You and I. Not only do I get a say in what my cop should be training, not only do I have a right to talk about it, regardless of if some loudmouth cop's been a cop for 20, 30, 40 years, but I will continue to express that right. I will continue to utilize that right to learn and to grow. I will continue to add to that narrative, not because I want to be heard, but I feel I have something to add. You are the foundation of this republic. You, These 56 men who signed their name, who swore a blood oath, so that you could be here, literally, they laid down the footing. They laid down the footing back in the 1770s. And you and I are this foundation of people that holds up this republic. That's powerful shit. And there is no person that is going to tell me, and no person that should be able to tell you, that you don't get a say-so in this republic. Who is elected as your representatives in your state matter. Who is elected as your sheriff, your state's attorney, the judges matter. All of those positions matter. The people that are elected to your city council, your county board matter. And it is important that when these people are being voted in or voted out, you ask questions to the folks that are running. Hey, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about me having an opinion? How do you feel about the Second Amendment or the First Amendment or the 13th Amendment? How do you feel about the rights of parents to choose how their kids are educated? How do you feel about a parent's right to inject things into their kids or not? Questions that, if they're important to you, you should ask. And if you don't like what that person has to say, go work hard and vote them out of office. If you don't like what they have to say, go work hard and put somebody else in their place. Maybe you. Maybe you. I've told you guys before, if you have questions about those things, that was my life for a long time. We ran campaigns. I was the vice chairman of a party. I raised money. I helped people get elected. Sat through a lot of bullshit meetings and heard a lot of hot air by a lot of politicians who are full of shit. But I also helped some people get into office that made good changes in our communities, that protected and upheld the Constitution, and that continued to build that foundation of liberty that is built on us, we the people, you and me. Be well. Don't be dickheads. If you like this video, if it was valuable to you, put some comments down there. If you've got some questions that I didn't answer, send an email, training@carrytrainer.com. I hope that you guys be well. I know that the times are scary. If there's something a topic that you'd like us to talk about, a topic that you want me to do a video on, shoot an email to me to training@carrytrainer.com or put it in the notes. Be good, guys.